everybody. I'm so glad that you're here today as we finish up our Easter series called Echo. We've been talking about some of the things that Jesus said that we never want to forget. You know, those things that we want to echo in our everyday lives. And before we dive in, can we just be real for a minute? Who loves hearing fail stories or watching fail videos? I think they're absolutely hilarious. And I don't know about you, but I love hearing about or watching other people's biggest fails. But what's much less hilarious is when we're the ones doing the failing. In fact, real quick, I want you to share with your group about some epic fails in your life. Pause this video, share a funny or epic fail, and then when you're ready, come back here and push play. Even if our failures are embarrassing or painful in the moment, it's usually pretty easy for us to look back on them and laugh. But sometimes we fail in more serious ways. And rather than look back at those failures and laugh at them, we look back and wonder if anyone, including God, will still love us. The truth is, we all mess up. I know I have a lot, and it's part of just being an imperfect human in an imperfect world. Maybe there are some choices that you keep making over and over again. And even though you know that they're wrong choices, you just keep making them. Maybe they're some form of addiction, but it leaves you feeling like a failure. Even though we know that we're all going to make mistakes in life, somehow our failures can leave us feeling just like that, failures. Those mistakes leave us feeling like we've disappointed the important people in our lives. And sometimes it even feels like we've let God down. When we make not so great choices, it's easy to feel like maybe God doesn't want to be close to us anymore. I don't know about you, but I don't like that feeling. Even if you're not sure what you think about God, the idea that God might not love you the same way if you fail may have crossed your mind. And it doesn't sound that great. No matter what the failure may be for you, I think this is true for all of us. We end up regretting it later. We wish we could take it back. We hope no one ever finds out, because if they do, it will change the way they see us. It's in those moments that the guilt starts to creep in. Guilt makes us believe that what we've done or the ways in which we failed mean that no one, including God or other people, could ever love or accept us. It creates this distance between God and us, and it feels like there's nothing we can do to fix it. And sometimes that distance feels so huge that we even want to give up. We might even believe that God thinks that we're a failure and that's all we're ever going to be, so why even try? So when we feel this way, what do we do? Today we're going to look at a pretty big fail from a guy named Peter. And Peter was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. That means he was part of Jesus' inner circle of friends while he was on earth. And Peter got to see and experience miracles that others didn't. But as we're about to find out, even guys like Peter were pretty capable of some pretty big fails as well. But before I tell you what his big fail was, because there's kind of a lot to choose from at times, we're actually going to fast forward a little bit. Last week we talked about Jesus' death on the cross, and after he was crucified, he rose from the dead. That's what we celebrated on Easter. He literally was dead and came back to life. But what were the other disciples supposed to do next? Most of the disciples went back to the work that they'd been doing before they met Jesus. So for many of them, including Peter, that meant fishing. And on this particular day, Peter and some of the other disciples were out fishing again. And all of a sudden, this guy starts shouting directions at them from the shore. He told them, try throwing your nets over on the other side of the boat to catch some more fish. So they did, and they caught so many fish that they couldn't even pull their nets back into the boat. And Peter's going, this is familiar. This has happened before. He knows who this is. He knows that this is not just some random guy that knows a lot about fishing. He knows, and what the disciples know, is that this is Jesus, risen from the dead, calling them from the shore. So once they realized this, they all decided to immediately head towards the shore from their boat to reunite with their friend, their leader, and this is where we pick up the story. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the third time Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, one thing to note here was that sometimes Peter was called Peter, sometimes he's called Simon Peter, and other times he's called just Simon. And Simon is his birth name. Peter was the name given to him by Jesus because it stands for the rock. And this is the rock that Jesus promised to build his church on. So Jesus gave Simon the new name Peter for what he was going to fulfill in Jesus' name. So when we see in the Bible that Jesus goes back and forth and different people from calling him Simon and Peter, that's the reason that we hear. And there's significance to notice in a second when Jesus refers back to him as Simon after calling him Peter for so long. So in order to understand why Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" we have to go back to Peter's huge fail. You see, when Jesus was on trial before his death, Peter was asked if he knew and believed who Jesus said he was. Seems like a silly question, right? I mean, as one of the 12 disciples, of course he knew who Jesus was, and of course Peter believed, but instead of telling the truth, Peter answered a different way. On 3 different times, Peter denied that he knew Jesus because he was afraid that the crowds would turn on him as well, just like they had Jesus. And you can probably imagine how guilty Peter felt after that. He had taken the coward's way out. There's no doubt that Peter felt like he had failed Jesus in a pretty big way. And now we fast forward to this moment on the beach when Peter saw Jesus again. Jesus asked Peter the simple yet massive question, "Do you love me?" So let's jump back in and see how Peter responds. "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." This was an amazing moment. Remember a few days earlier, Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times Peter was asked if he knew Jesus, and all 3 times he denied him. So here, Jesus gave Peter the chance to make that failure right. He did it by asking Peter a question 3 times in a row. Jesus was giving Peter a second chance. But Jesus didn't just stop there. Each and every time Peter said he loved Jesus, Jesus gave him the same command: take care of my sheep. Now, Jesus wasn't asking Peter to put down his fishing nets and become an actual shepherd. No, Jesus was asking Peter to take care of other Christians. He was inviting Peter back into the story, and not just that, he was giving him a pretty big role to play. Now, if I were Peter, I would have been expecting Jesus to tell me I couldn't be his disciple anymore after this. But Jesus had paid for Peter's sins on the cross. Every single one of them. And because of what Jesus did at Easter, Peter's story wasn't done. He actually became a pretty significant leader in the early church, and you can read about a lot of that in the book of Acts. Peter's failure didn't disqualify him from God's love, and ours don't either. Your failures don't change Jesus' love or your role in his story. Because of Jesus, there's always an opportunity for forgiveness and grace. Just like Peter experienced that morning on the beach, Peter may have counted himself out. Maybe you've counted yourself out too, but Jesus' love never counts us out. His love can give us a fresh start because your failures don't change Jesus' love. Listen, we all fail. We all make mistakes. We all sin. And we're all going to keep failing for the rest of our lives. But the next time you start to believe that your mistakes make you a failure or that you've gone too far for God's love, I want you to remember Peter. Jesus didn't move away from Peter when he failed. Instead, Jesus moved towards him. And the cool thing is that Jesus will do the same for us. Instead of giving up when you make a mistake, choose to move closer to him. Go to him for refuge. Don't hide your face from him. Choose to spend time with him instead of moving away. Whatever steps that may look like for you, just remember that your failures don't change Jesus' love. And try to do your best to put habits in place or boundaries or whatever you need to do in order to keep yourself from going down the same path again and again and again. See, God's love for us inspires life change. We don't come to Jesus and clean our act up so that we can be saved by him. He has saved us, and therefore our lives are changed. And we start to clean up our act through the power of his Spirit as we live our lives for his glory and not our own. Remember, your failures don't change Jesus' love. Imagine what might happen if you really actually believed that. I think if we lived like we truly believed our failures don't take us away from Jesus' love, then we would understand and see God's love in a bigger way in us and for those around us in the world. Your small groups are a great place to keep this conversation going. Remember, your small group and your small group leader want to encourage you to spend time with Jesus. They want to be a safe place for you to go when you do make a mistake. They want to encourage you not to give up. Instead, to take that step towards Jesus and his love for you. The more that you do this, the more you'll see that your failures don't change Jesus' love. And as we move into small groups, I want you to think about this one question. What's one step that you can take towards Jesus this week? Now, next week, just as a reminder, it is Double Dog Dare-a-thon. So that's happening this Saturday. I hope you invite your friends. I hope that you guys come back next Sunday to have all the fun and receive your awards and get the prizes and watch everybody else's dares as we select the best ones. It's going to be a lot of fun. Last year was the biggest year that we've had in doing it, and I would love for more of you to participate this year as we continue to grow the event and just make tons of memories from it. It's a lot of fun. You can do it from anywhere. In fact, one year, one of our students was on a traveling soccer team, so she and all her friends were in a hotel in Ohio, and they completed the dares. And so you can do it from anywhere and send them in. Just make sure you register on the website so you can get all the accurate information and participate. And with all that being done, I'll let you finish this time with your groups. Love you, and I'll see you next week.